Alice, Madness Returns. The twisted take of the Alice Through the Looking Glass story in the form of a hack and slash that released in 2011, and a sequel to 2000's American McGee's Alice. American McGee got his start working at id Software in the 90s as tech support, but was promoted to a music manager and level designer, lending his talents to both the Quake and the Doom series. After his departure from id Software, he went to EA to realize his own video game, Alice. It makes sense why the first game was released as a PC exclusive, as that was the field he had the most experience in at the time, and how it was developed using the id Tech 3 engine. The game had become a cult classic, being the 47th best-selling game of that year. A PlayStation 2 port was planned, along with a feature-length computer-animated film featuring Wes Craven as a director, both of which were cancelled, as we wouldn't see the return of Alice Little for over a decade. Alice Madness Returns is one of my favorite games of that era. It has inspired me with its creative world and corrupted characters, and after playing through the game again, I decided it was finally time to talk about it in full. Welcome to Cackling Pumpkins, and this is Alice Madness Returns.
Every game has a story to tell, even the game of life itself. Whatever that means, I don't know.
Tug? Oh my god, you look terrible!
I have literally looked like this for over a decade. Is that my fault you left me in the fire?
Okay, but are you dead though?
No, but that's besides the point!
Oh yeah, that reminds me. Alice and I actually have something in common. We both had our homes catch fire in our childhoods. To talk about the story of Madness Returns, we must start where the madness began. When she was just a child, Alice Little lost her home and family to a devastating house fire. Okay, so my story isn't exactly the same in that regard. You see, in 2010, a Halloween decoration caught fire, as it quickly became uncontrollable. Thankfully, the fire department was right down the street, even though it took over 10 minutes for them to get there, and it wasn't even the one in our neighborhood, because the fire truck came from the opposite direction! But the good news was that no one got hurt in the experience, except for our pet cat we had named Lily, who couldn't be found in the mayhem. But still, I'm thankful my experience wasn't the exact same, as my family is still alive. But for Alice, this traumatic event damaged her mind, as she was taken to the Rutledge Asylum, but for years, none of the treatment seemed to work. When she was young, her Wonderland was a fun and cheerful place to escape to, but after the fire and the trauma that she had suffered, her Wonderland had transformed into a grim version of what it once was.
Save us, Alice!
She ventures through to defeat the Queen of Hearts and restore her Wonderland. The second game takes place years later. Alice is now 19 years old and is no longer stuck in the asylum, but she still has the fire stuck in her mind, and she is desperate for answers. But most of those around her just want her to move on. Her psychiatrist, Dr. Bumby, is trying to make her forget the fire.
There, Alice. Better now, aren't we?
My head's exploded and there's a steam hammer in my chest.
Oh. Well, isn't that pleasant? Of course, that's not going to happen, as she returns to Wonderland only to find it in ruin once more, and this devastation seems to be connected to this infernal train. Alice ventures between Wonderland and the real world in hopes of finally getting the answer she needs to save Wonderland and herself. Most of the characters in the game are veterans from the first title, but now you see how the infernal train and even the events of the first game have changed them. For example, Mad Hatter is left in pieces, as both the Mad Hare and Dormouse, who were originally experimented on by the Mad Hatter in the first game, have now taken over his domain and turned it into a tea factory. You can also learn more about the people of the real world, which is something the original game lacked. Though these characters aren't as interesting as the ones in Wonderland, you do at least get to see their relations to Alice and the overall story. Throughout each chapter, you'll find one door with flames behind it. These are revelations that expose more of the story that Alice never knew, almost like repressed memories or missing context she needed to reveal another side of the story.
What is a game if it has no fun? No form of play or excitement and thrills. The idea of such a thing brings me many chills.
Alice Madness Returns is a third-person action game where you play as Alice Little. In the real world, there isn't much you can do, but in Wonderland, she's physically a completely different person, not only by appearance, but also by her abilities. After jumping, you can actually jump 3 additional times, but each jump is weaker than the last. Holding the jump button in the air causes Alice to float to reach farther places. This ability is comparable to Princess Peach's hover mechanic introduced in Super Mario Bros. 2, or Mario USA if you prefer. Much like that ability, most platforming challenges almost lose most of their difficulty with the floating ability used. Alice can also use a dodging ability, where she turns into a swarm of butterflies and moves in a single direction. This ability can be used to escape swarms of enemies, or enemies with great range and speed. After dodging, you can use focus to lock on to nearby enemies. How focus is executed is comparable to that of the lock-on ability from the Legend of Zelda 3D titles, but it can be annoying to focus on the right enemy if there are too many. Pressing the jump button while using focus causes Alice to pull out her umbrella, which if timed correctly can reflect enemy projectiles. You're mainly going to use the umbrella for enemies that you can attack until you break their defenses, being the Menacing Ruin and the Cannon Crab. You can also shrink, and while this move has no offensive purpose, it's mainly used to reveal hidden pathways, go into keyholes, and see inscriptions on the wall that act as hints for both the main game and some secrets. The original game lacked many of these features, and didn't leave itself open to many defensive or movement options, so many of these new additions are a warm welcome.
Being a game genre with action in the title, you're given weaponry throughout that is vital.
Dude, did you become a fucking genius or something?
You think I made these up on the spot? You give me too much credit. I have the power of the internet. Now this part, you must edit out of the video. Please.
The first being the Vorpal Blade, returning from the first game, and is Alice's signature weapon. It uses quick, swift attacks to slash through the opponents. The Pepper Grinder, given to you by the Duchess, this weapon is your first ranged toy, but it's mainly used to solve puzzles, shoot targets, and these hidden pig snouts, which I'll talk about later. The Hobby Horse, a powerful swinging weapon. Next is the Teapot Cannon, your second ranged weapon that acts like a grenade launcher. Each of these weapons can be upgraded up to their 4th version by using teeth collected throughout each level. The only weapons that can't be upgraded are the Umbrella and the Clockwork Bomb. The Clockwork Bomb is mainly used to destroy breakable walls, but you get the Hobby Horse soon after, which can do the same thing in a shorter time, so why keep using it? Well, you're going to have to use it to solve switch-based puzzles, and as for combat, enemies are distracted by the bomb, as they'll focus their attention on attacking it, rather than you. On the top left is your health, represented through red roses. If you're pushed down to 1 rose, then you can use Hysteria mode. Your weapon's strength is doubled, and you're invincible for a short time. You can use rose petals that fall from enemies to regain health, and while I'm not 100% sure if that is the case, it seems like the lower your health is, the more likely a rose will fall from an enemy.
Whether we like it or not, most hidden secrets are revealed through time, like when Zack... Gee, what a crime.
You weren't supposed to tell anyone about that!
Unfortunately, the game is on the shorter side, as it's only 6 chapters long and can be beaten from between 10 to 12 hours. But I'm honestly the kind of person who prefers games of this length, as they're almost guaranteed to be entertaining all the way through, and have a lot more focus. I would much rather play a shorter game that's fun all the way through and encourages replayability rather than a 40 to 80 hour game with nothing to do and no desire to even get through the whole thing. There's a reason why people keep going back to games like Super Mario 64, Super Smash Bros. Melee, and Mega Man X despite their length in comparison to newer games, because even though they're on the shorter side, they make up for it in almost every way possible. You have a ton of unlockables to collect throughout the game. These include the Pig Snouts, which if shot with the Pepper Grinder will show you an alternate pathway or just give you more teeth. Memories of Alice's past, spoken by another character in her point of view. The shape of the memory relates to that character it's associated with. If it's a house, then it's Alice's family. If it's a pair of glasses, it's Dr. Bumby, and more. Bottles that can unlock character profiles and concept art. And Radula rooms. There are 4 in chapters 2 to 5. The rooms are different challenges that if won, will give you a piece of a red rose. Complete 4 and you'll get an extension to your health. Some of these challenges include fighting all the enemies, survive until the time ends, a minigame from an earlier part of the game, and a riddle from Cheshire Cat. If you miss any of these, then that's okay, as not only can you return to an earlier part of the game using the chapter select, but after you beat the game, you have the option to start a new adventure with New Game Plus. You keep all of your weapon upgrades that you got in your first run, and all of the secrets you found will still be counted, so you don't have to worry about collecting them all over again and can focus on the ones that you missed.
How I love thee, I would count the ways, but for you see, that would take days.
Alice Madness Returns still holds up visually to this day, with its art style that mixes realistic textures with a twisted take on old children's book illustrations. Its environment is gorgeous, as they love showing it off every chance they get, as there are moments where if you press L1, the camera will move to a clear shot of what's around you. Some characters look a little gross, but it has a charm to it. Plus, I can understand, as the real world is interpreted as bleak and harsh, and Alice's Wonderland is corrupted. As you enter different parts of Wonderland, you will also get a new dress that represents that location. My favorite is the Steam dress, due to its gothic colors, fitting Alice's style, and the overall steampunk aesthetic that doesn't feel too overwhelming. The game does have paid DLC for more dresses and weapon variations with their own unique abilities, but it's not like you need any of this content to beat the game. Personally, I don't mind DLC, as long as it's worth the price and actually adds something to the game. The game can be challenging in certain fights, but it's less of a matter of just hacking and slashing, but prioritizing what enemies should be defeated first and what weapons to use on them. Some enemies take some getting used to, and often feel more threatening during their first encounter, but once you figure out what weapons they're weak against and their moveset, then it's just a matter of time before those once boss-like encounters become as common as any other enemy. Each chapter has its own unique exclusive enemies you need to face. The Madcap and the Teapot in Hatter's Domain, the Ice Shark and the Cannon Crab in Tundrafall, and the Card Soldiers in the Queen's Land are just a few of these enemies. But after the chapter is over, you may have to encounter them again in the Radula rooms, so they still feel like they were put into good use. The only enemies you'll see on a constant are the Ruin, the physical embodiment of the corruption that Wonderland is facing. The most threatening, challenging, my personal favorite enemy is the Colossal Ruin. This thing is an absolute monster and can easily kill Alice in an instant if you're not careful, and despite what I've told you, the Colossal Ruin may be the only enemy I never got used to, and that's just the way I like it. This thing is memorable for that reason, an enemy that brings the thrill of dread and panic as soon as they spawn. Oh god, here it comes! No, you get away from me! No, 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 no. Oh god. I love that so much.
Did I say that I love thee? On the contrary, I hate your guts and want to fill them with more than one canary.
Dude, it's pretty fucking metal.
No, a canary's a bird, you dumbass.
Despite how important this game is to me and how much it inspired some of my work, I do have to admit that while playing this game again, I found that there were some things holding this game back. For starters, the camera feels a bit too close to Alice, which can make certain platforming challenges harder than what they need to be. As already mentioned, the focus can be annoying to use, especially if there's multiple enemies and you need to focus on a certain one. I always think this game could have used a bit more time to focus on polish. I don't know if it's just my copy of the game, as it is a decade old at this point, but I've had moments where Alice will get stuck on certain geometry, even tiny edges she's supposed to be able to walk on, some textures that didn't load in certain places, and the biggest thing that tells me this is the Radula rooms. After completing a minigame based room, you'll be sent to the Cheshire Cat, where you'll make a statement implying that you answered a question correctly, which out of context just makes no sense.
You're correct, miss.
It honestly seems like they used it as a placeholder that they were going to replace later, but they never did. While I do like the soundtrack as it has some fantastic ambient sounds and music box inspired music, it does not compare to the soundtrack of the original game in the slightest. Just take a listen and see for yourself. Here's the Vale of Tears field theme from Madness Returns. Now, here's the Vale of Tears theme from American McGee's Alice. Like I said, the Madness Returns version is good and has its advantages over the original, but I honestly love the original game soundtrack so much more. But the worst thing about the game is one of its own enemies. You may be confused, but I despise the Slithering Ruin. Yeah, it's the weakest, slowest, and easiest enemy to kill in the entire game. So what's wrong with it? It's not the enemy itself, it's how you encounter it. There are breakable objects in the game that hold extra teeth and possibly rose petals. Think of them like Mario's coin block or vases inside the Zelda series. But there is a good chance that one of them has a slithering ruin inside of it, and there is no hint as to which one it's hiding in. As Alice moves forward after swinging the Vorpal blade, there's a chance you could kill the slithering ruin as soon as it comes out, especially if you keep slashing, but this could also lead to a free hit from behind, and there is almost nothing you can do about it. Just break it open and hope that there isn't one, and if there is, just pray it doesn't hit you. Yeah, it's not a strong enemy by all means, so you really don't have to worry, but it's still really annoying to deal with. God, you little fucker! Alice Madness Returns would be the last game in the series so far. In the early 2010s, American McGee created Alice Otherlands, a series of animated shorts and illustrations taking place after Madness Returns, featuring Alice going into other individuals' wonderlands, these people being famous artists and inventors such as composer Richard Wagner and writer Jules Gabriel Verne. As of now, he is attempting to crowdfund a third installment to the Alice series, Alice Asylum, acting as a prequel to both Madness Returns and American McGee's Alice. Problem is that EA still owns the gaming rights to the series. I'm not 100% certain of the current status of Asylum, but I hope it gets to see the light of day, as a lot of the artwork shown is really promising. Hopefully, we'll get to see Alice's demented wonderland one more time.
Ah, Alice. We can't go home again. No surprise, really. Only a very few find the way, and most of them don't recognize it when they do. Delusions, too, die hard. Only the savage regard the endurance of pain as the measure of worth. Forgetting pain is convenient. Remembering it, agonizing. But recovering the truth is worth the suffering. And our wonderland, though damaged, is safe in